presentar a nuestra invitada especial de esta noche, la doctora Ray Fis. Ray es la nieta del legendario cazador de nazis, Wiesenthal, quien dedicó su vida a llevar a los nazis y sus colaboradores ante la justicia. Como custodia delegado de su abuelo, Ray ha continuado su trabajo en el campo de la remembranza y la educación sobre el Holocausto. Ha convertido una de sus visiones de vida inspirar a las futuras generaciones a luchar contra el antisemitismo y la injusticia. Es un honor tenerla con nosotros esta noche para compartir sus ideas sobre la vida y obra de su difunto abuelo. Welcome to OLAMI Ort, Dr. Kreisberg. Please join us on the stage. Hi, Dr. Ray. If it's okay with you, can I ask a few questions so that we can learn about your late grandfather?
Of course. But maybe I can start and say something to the audience. I don't see you, but I know that you're here. Sharon approached me, or the community approached me about, I think, 2 or 3 months ago with the invitation to join you for Yom HaShoah. And when I told my mother, who is my grandfather's sole daughter, that I am invited to participate at the Yom HaShoah event in Mexico, my mother told me how enthusiastic my grandfather always was with his visit in Mexico, and he had very good bonds with Mexico. And when I was in Vienna visiting the Vienna Wiesenthal Institute in January this year, I asked him for a few documents about the interaction that my grandfather had with Mexico. So I got a bunch of letters that I don't understand, and I got a few pictures, some of them with people that seemed quite old. The pictures were taken in the, let's say, the late 80s. And I saw one picture with a person who looked a little bit younger at the time, and I thought it would be great if I would know who these people were. Then we had our call, right? Because Sharon prepared this evening very well, and we were talking about what are the expectations and how we're going to conduct this evening. And then at some point I showed Sharon a picture, and she said, this is Ishai, or you call him Ishi, Gitlin. And this is very moving for me, because it brought me in contact with Ishi, and he remembered working with my grandfather. And therefore, I was very grateful that you identified the picture and that we closed this circle.
Thank you so much for the anecdote. So, if it's okay with you, let's start. Can you tell us about Simon Wiesenthal's upbringing? Where was he born? What was his family like? And what did he do for a living?
Okay. So Simon Wiesenthal was born in Galicia, in a shtetl, a small village called Buchach, where Shai Agnon was born. And he was born on the 31st of December 1908 in Buchach. And he had a younger brother, and his 2 parents. And he was a young student at the gymnasium, but at a very young age he already lost his father, who died in 1915 during the war, his brother, and his mother, Rosa, after whom my mother is named. She remarried and she moved to another town. So Simon Wiesenthal remained alone in Buchach, and the only person that he sort of interacted with and with her family was a lady, or a young girl at the time, called Zila Müller. Zila will become my grandmother, and that was the beginning of the love story of my grandparents that lasted for 67 years. So Simon and Zila both graduated from the gymnasium in Buchach, and then my grandfather decided that he wanted to become an architect. He studied in Lemberg, and in Prague, and he started working as an architect. You can see some of the buildings that he built in the style of the Bauhaus, and this was what my grandparents were doing prior to the war.
Thank you very much. And did they have any children before the war?
No, my grandparents did not have any children. They got married in 1936, and they had no children before the war.
Thank you. What was his experience during the war, and how did he manage to survive?
Okay, so I think that my grandfather used his skills, and these were very well developed. One of the skills he had is that he was an architect, so he knew how to draw. And when he was working for what is called the Ostbahn, the railroad or the trains of the east, the Ostbahn, he was drawing on the trains the drawings that were requested by the Nazis. And this is one thing that he did. But the other thing is that Simon Wiesenthal was always very networked, and he knew how to find his way. And that way he found the possibility to get false papers from my grandmother, who worked in forced labor in Germany. And this was, I think, a second asset. A third asset is that he is a survivor, and this is also how he defines himself. He knew how to survive, he had the reason to survive, and I think that his life shows that he will always call himself a survivor.
Thank you. How did Simon Wiesenthal's experience as a Holocaust survivor influence his work? What motivated him to become a Nazi hunter?
Okay, so Simon Wiesenthal, as I told you, was living in Lemberg, and the concentration camp next to Lemberg was Janovska concentration camp. First it was a ghetto, then it was a concentration camp, and my grandfather went in and out of this ghetto. At some point, he was arrested, and he tried to escape, and he committed suicide, which was unsuccessful, luckily enough, and he healed and became more or less healthy again, and this brought him towards, I would say, the end of the war, while the March of the Living started, and from the east, that means from Ukraine, where he was situated, he moved through several concentration camps till he arrived in Mauthausen. Mauthausen is a terrible concentration camp. If you've known and seen pictures of this camp, you can see the steps, the quarries where people had to carve the stones, and as the steps were very steep and the people were of course exhausted, they would sometimes fall over and that way kill each other. Simon Wiesenthal was not working at these steps because he arrived very ill to the concentration camp, and he was in what is called the infirmary. It's a sort of hospital. And when Mauthausen was liberated by the Americans, by Colonel Seiben, then he saw that things are changing. The changes were maybe multiple, but one of them was that people started looking for their families. Everyone wanted to know, where is my family? But another thing that Simon Wiesenthal saw is that there is a change in the camp, and the Germans are all of a sudden afraid. They are afraid, and he wasn't used to that, of course. And that brought him to the notion that maybe they are now also responsible for what they did. And when he saw a situation in which an American investigated a Nazi, he thought that this is something that maybe he can also contribute to. And he asked the Americans, please take me, I would like to work for you. And this is how the work of Simon Wiesenthal started in the early years when Mauthausen was liberated. And from Mauthausen he moved to Linz, and he was living on the street where the family of Adolf Eichmann was living, only about 100 meters away from the family. And this is when he learned about Eichmann, because Eichmann was not someone who was known to the Jews. They of course suffered from the final solution, but Eichmann was not the Nazi that you would see in the camp. And this is, I think, the beginning of a career that Simon Wiesenthal took upon himself to search for Nazis and their collaborators.
Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your grandmother, Sila. Did they manage to get together after the war? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so of course my grandparents got together because otherwise I wouldn't be here. But it's a nice story how they got together. And it was the following. I told you that Simon Wiesenthal, he got false papers from my grandmother, and therefore she was in Germany during the war. After the war, she went to Warsaw, and she was probably also looking for family. What can she do? How can she resume her life? And Simon, my grandfather, he was at the time in the deportation camp called Vida, also near Mannheim. And he asked a person called Dr. Birni, who went to Warsaw, if he can look for a lady called Sila Wiesenthal. And Dr. Birni said, okay, I'll do that. And he went to Warsaw, and he put a note, I'm looking for Sila Wiesenthal. But what happened was that 3 women came up to Dr. Birni and said, I am Sila Wiesenthal. So Dr. Birni had to make a decision, who is the right Sila Wiesenthal. And he made his decision, or he made his choice. Maybe later on he said, because if she would not have been my grandfather's wife, then he would have married her. So I think that's a great compliment from my grandmother. And this is when my grandparents united in 1945, and in 1946 my mother was born, Paulina. And Paulina, my mother, she's named after my great-grandmothers, Rosa, Paike Shoshana. And here you can see the picture of the young couple, Simon and Sila Wiesenthal, and here above me you can see them sitting in the Wintermichel deportation camp. And many years later, you can see them with their great-granddaughter, Ella, who is my oldest daughter.
Amazing story. Thank you so much. Simon Wiesenthal has many allies and adversaries in his pursuit for justice. Can you share with us some examples of the good and the bad times he faced?
So, if you think about where was Simon Wiesenthal physically working, okay, he was in Austria. He was where the people who were active in the war, Nazis collaborated, would return to and would resume their life. And they had this person who was in the middle. He was disturbing them. He wanted to do something which was actually risking them. And therefore, I think that my grandfather was very much in danger in Vienna. I was in Vienna now last month, in mid-March, because the Austrian government nowadays awards a Simon Wiesenthal Prize. And last March, the second prize was awarded, among others, to Síguenos, which we had yesterday. And one of the things that I spoke about there, and it was it came very natural. I didn't prepare this because it was a panel, and in a panel you are much less in control. But you're very nice, so I feel very good. But one of the things that I mentioned in Vienna, which of course I cannot say here, is that Simon Wiesenthal and I, as a granddaughter who visited Vienna very often, could feel that as well, felt fear. Okay? There was not only that he was hunted, he was a hunter himself, but he was also hunted. And therefore there was police, I remember very well, there was a police officer in the front of the house, in the back of the house, and there were police officers in his office, in the first Bezirk, in the first district, and he was not beloved. Only later, okay, because I do want to say this to you as well, only many years later, and especially today, my grandfather is, I would say, very warmly embraced in Vienna. And this is an entire revolution, and it's a pity that my grandfather did not experience this during his lifetime, because the values that he stands for are very universal values that today are very acceptable by Austria.
Thank you so much. What did Simon Wiesenthal teach his daughter and grandchildren based on his experience? Did he talk about his experience at home?
So I don't think that my grandfather taught nor his daughter, my mother, nor us anything about the Holocaust, not about his experiences. My grandfather was very, very devoted to his work. While I was sitting here in the front row there, at the beginning of the ceremony and throughout the first part, I was looking at the picture of my grandfather. Now I can't see it, but it's a little bit in front of you, in front of me, but you can see it very well. And what I saw when I was looking at the picture is that there are the eyes of Simon Wiesenthal, and it's my grandfather. Even though he passed away, it's still my grandfather. And he can be, here he is, yes, right behind me. And you can see that he is looking, okay? I feel that he's looking at me. But what I can tell you, and that's the reason I think that I'm here, because you can all see, if you look at the picture, that he might be looking at anyone, and he probably is. But what I can tell you from a personal angle is I remember his mustache, okay? I remember coming to my grandparents and you politely had to kiss 1, 2, I'm from Holland, so we do it 3 times. And this beard, okay, was always so itchy. It was very unpleasant. Why am I saying this? Because we grew up as a family in the shadow of the Holocaust. We were not part of my grandfather's mission. We were a family, okay? We were meals, we were holidays, we were any normal life that a family could have. So I didn't have the opportunity to talk to my grandfather about his work, but I only saw him. And by observing, you can learn a lot. Because I feel that I have seen, I was 38 years old when my grandfather passed away. Wow, what a man this was. The energy, the devotion, the ability to overcome a lot of suffering, also from his side, a lot of failure, okay? I come from Israel, and we always say Israel is a startup nation, and one of the things that turns Israel into a startup nation is that you can fail. He failed, but he also succeeded. He succeeded big time.
He did. What is it like to be a relative of Simon Wiesenthal? Do you feel it carries an additional responsibility?
Okay, so Simon Wiesenthal has several family members, right? He has several relatives. There is my mother. There's also my father, who always says that no one remembers him, because it's always Simon Wiesenthal, his daughter, and his grandchildren. So my father used to mention this. And we are 3 siblings. I'm the oldest, and I have 2 brothers. My brother Danny, who's called Dan Ashel. He's named after my grandfather's father, whom I told you was killed during World War I, and my younger brother, Yuri. And so we're a very small family, and for reasons that are unknown to me, I was the only person, also when my grandfather was alive, who felt that this person is doing something which is really, really important. And I tried to accompany my grandfather because he did not have company from his wife, from my grandmother. My grandmother was not part of this. My mother was also not part of this. And actually it was a bond that I had with my father, that we sometimes went to these events. When my grandfather passed away, I started commemorating him. I think it's very important. I think that Simon Wiesenthal, he did not forget the 6 million Jews. We know this. And I think it's important that we will not forget him, because it's important to remember what he stood for, so that we will be able to implement that. And therefore, I took this upon myself as a mission. I also have a normal job. I serve as innovation attaché at the Dutch Embassy in Israel. I develop R&D collaboration between Israel and the Netherlands. But it's a huge project to commemorate my late grandfather. And I do this, as you can see, that's the reason why I'm here.
Thank you so much. Continuing with your answer, Simon Wiesenthal once said, "After our death, we will meet all these people who were killed by the Nazis. And when they ask me, what are you doing after the war? I will tell them, I didn't forget you." How do you think his work impacted Holocaust victims and their families?
Thanks for the question. I think, and I also spoke about this morning with the children. I also want to thank OLAMI for inviting me here, not only to talk to you this evening, but also to have the privilege to talk to your children and to your grandchildren. And what I did this morning, I was telling them a little bit about a day in Simon and Sila's life, and I tried to point out some of the key messages that my grandfather's work stands for. One of them is listed here. It's justice, not vengeance, but there were also others. And I mentioned this morning, for instance, that by contributing to the capture of Adolf Eichmann and bringing him to court, the dignity of the Jewish people was restored. So the fact that we now feel that we are not only katzon latevach, but we now understand what happened. We cannot judge these people anymore. I remember that Avi, even though you speak in Spanish and I don't understand Spanish, but you were talking about the state of Israel, about Medinat Israel, and I think you were talking about the debate when should Yom HaShoah take place. Okay, so this is an important thing, the kavod shel ha'am ha'yehudi. The second thing, which I think is that I heard this yesterday evening when we had the Zikaron Basalon from the Museum of Tolerance, that I know that the Israeli delegation visited this afternoon, that it's not only about Jews. And my grandfather was not only looking for perpetrators and Nazis that murder Jews, but also for gypsies and homosexuals and other minorities. So the very universal approach to justice, not only looking at the Jews as the victims, but also others. And maybe I'll just say one more thing as an example, because it is for me something that I feel close to. I was born in the Netherlands, and of course you all know the Diary of Anne Frank. But in the 50s, while my grandfather was living in Linz, there was a rumor during a play that took place in Vienna about Anne Frank that the diary is is fake. And here you can also see how smart my grandfather was, and he decided that he's going to devote time and energy to look for the Gestapo officer who arrested the family of Anne Frank. And he managed to do that, also with the help of a lot of friends, good friends that he had in the Netherlands. And what you can see here, you can see Anne Frank on the right-hand side, and in the middle you can see the picture of Karl Silberbauer. And Karl Silberbauer, he was a police officer who went back to his work in Vienna. He was actually working not so far away from where my grandfather was working. And when Karl Silberbauer was arrested, he admitted that he was indeed the one who arrested the family of Anne Frank. And by doing this, my grandfather made sure that the Holocaust cannot be denied. Okay, I think that I can give more examples, but I think this is sufficient.